with you in the Midlands, BBC Radio.
Our special guest tonight on the Record Collectors is one of the most famous bass guitarists, if not the most famous bass guitarist in the world, Bill Wyman. Welcome to the Record Collectors, Bill.
Oh, nice to be here.
Now, we'll go back to the days, if we may, about Bill Perks, the early days, your early musical influences. What were your first musical
when
memories?
I was a kid, rock and roll hadn't been invented, and it was just before the Second World War and during it, so it was all big band stuff, but obviously I don't remember much of it because I was so little. I was 9 when the war ended, and I do remember the big bands like Glenn Miller and all that sort of stuff, but I wasn't, I was still too young to appreciate it. I used to see my aunts around the radio all raving about people. They were probably Frank Sinatra and people like that when they were young, and they were all swooning and all that, and I couldn't understand why, I thought it was quite strange. But then, of course, when I got into the 50s, rock and roll came along, and I was in the military then. I did my national service in Germany, and I learned all the early rock and roll stuff, and then I bought a guitar and went on from there.
Because you weren't in the
Skiffle, of course. I mustn't forget Skiffle, which was the big rave in England, and I think it's just about every band from the 60s, whoever was a band, Beatles, Stones, Who, Zeppelin, all of them, Faces, they all learned in little skiffle bands in their streets. Everybody played skiffle music.
Now, you weren't in the original Rolling Stones, and I say that deliberately because there wasn't a G in it. There wasn't a G in the original Rolling Stones.
Well, there wasn't really an original Rolling Stones without the G, because it was just a put together band for one show in the summer of '62, and people fluctuated, and they only played like 1 or 2 shows a month up to the Christmas, and so they only played probably about 7 or 8 shows with a different lineups and different bass player and a different drummer and all that, until I joined in December of '62, and then Charlie Watts joined in Jan '63, and that's when we were the 5. So alright, I missed the first 4 months, but we only played 7 or 8 gigs then, and they were very, no money in it or anything like that.
I mean, Deca had a reputation, and I may have to edit this out.
For missing
well,
well,
they recording stars seem to be, they're very careful with the money, if I can put it that way.
Yes, they were, but they did miss a lot of big acts. But that happened to the Beatles. The Beatles were turned down by many record companies at the beginning, so we went and did a recorded session in March of '63, and we were turned down by 7 record companies, before Deca took an interest some months later. So we all went through that, and the kids still go through it today.
Now, for rock history, and we are
you never become famous unless you get turned down in the beginning. I mean, I think people like Elton were turned down. Elvis. I think everybody was turned down at the beginning.
Oh yeah. I mean, we're archivists. We collect memorabilia, and we collect it.
As well, so.
I know that you've got the collection of Rolling Stones, and we're very envious of it.
Oh, right.
but your early demonstration records, there was some material that wasn't released. I mean, do you still have that in your archives?
Well, I have my copies of it, and old records, pressings, but it's all come out on bootleg records since then, anyway.
There's a comment in this month's Record Collector that says you actually had to go out and buy your own records. Is that true?
Yeah, with Deca, they were very stingy. They used to send 2 copies or 3 copies to the office of the new single, or even the album. Like 1 copy for the office and 1 copy between us or something. So you had to go out and buy your own records, absolutely. And we were astounded when we talked to Americans, and they said, when we release a record, they give us boxes of them. Oh, let's go out and buy mine.
And you still got the original records, have you?
Yeah. Yeah, I got all the singles and everything, yeah.
Now we come on with the Chuck Berry classic, which you recorded for Deca. I think Andrew Loog...
May the 10th.
Yes, Andrew Loog Oldham, '63, which of course was your first British chart success.
Yeah, it got to number 20. That one did, and we just tried to find something. We were playing blues, you see. We weren't playing commercial music, so we had to pick a Chuck Berry number that bounced about a bit. And after we'd made it, we didn't really like it after we released it, so we never played it on stage. We went out on shows and packed audiences and all that, even though we had no chart success. We had a cult following, and we never played our single. And they used to go nuts. Andrew Oldham and the management, the record company, used to go nuts because we weren't playing our single on shows. I don't think that's ever been done before or since either.
Can I ask where you got your blues influence from? Because the only place I can think of in London would have been Dobell's Jazz Shop at the time. Was that where you went?
The one place that did sell the occasional Big Bill Brunsey album or something obscure like that, but I didn't know about that. I was playing South London. I was playing R&B, rock and roll with my own band for 2 years, playing stuff like Jerry Lee Lewis, Fats Domino, Little Richard, all that kind of Larry Williams, all that, Sam Cooke, Jackie Wilson, all those sort of things. But then I went to the Stones and they were playing real down-home blues.
Can I ask then how you picked your material for your very first album? I mean, am I right in thinking most...
Stage set, almost.
Was it your actual stage set then?
Pretty much, yeah.
What did you leave out?
What did we leave?
I'm always interested in...
Well, we did a lot of Jimmy Reed songs, and on the albums we only probably did one on each album. We did 6 or 8 of his numbers. We did a lot of Bo Diddley songs. So when we did albums, we just did a Bo Diddley song on the album. We didn't do them all. And we did things like Chuck Berry's Jaguar and the Thunderbird, and Bo Diddley's Hey Crawdaddy, doing the Crawdaddy and all those kind of things, and Hey Good Looking and all that, but we didn't do them on record. There were too many. Yeah.
Your early tours, you toured with Bo Diddley. How did he react to you, playing similar music? And some of the tracks, of course, covers of his own recordings.
Well, he was very flattered, but we didn't play them when we played with him. He knew we played them because we played them backstage and all that. And he said that guy, that Brian there, he's the only cat that's ever worked it out what I do. And he's the only white cat I ever met that knows how to play my music right, the rhythm, which was with the tremolo, and Brian had it really, and so he was very complimentary to Brian.
I mean, talking of Brian, do you have?
So we became great friends with Bo Diddley.
Yeah, you've known him you've known him all your life virtually now.
Now, yeah.
Just as you mentioned Brian Jones, of course, fans and our listeners have very fond memories of Brian Jones. I mean, do you have any particular memories that stuck in your mind?
Hundreds of memories of, the magic thing about Brian, I think that was stand out as a musician was that he could pick up any instrument and get something out of it, something musical that would enhance a song and make it different from an ordinary song. He'd do marimbas on Under My Thumb, he'd play dulcimer on Lady Jane. He'd find instruments in the studio from the band the night before or that was coming in the next day, like a glockenspiel or a Wurlitzer or a pipe or a fluty thing, and he'd just find a little line or a little melody which we'd use on our recordings.
Now, when you first went to the USA, you actually there were people like top in the charts, Billy J. Kramer and other acts such as that, which were different. We were talking different from yourselves. I mean, you went over there without the.
America's like most countries, if you slap something in their face that is kind of interesting for 5 seconds and a bit plastic, they go for it immediately. So then you get all the wrong artists being popular. Like in England, exactly the same. Fred and the Dreamers, Billy J. Kramer, Dave Clark 5, and all that lot, which we did not rate at all because we didn't think of them as really good musicians and playing real good, honest music. So the same thing happened when they went to America. And Herman's Hermits, they all had the big hits. They all went number one. Billy J. Kramer had 3, and Herman had 6, and the Beatles were great, of course. They were all right. And then there was us who didn't have hits, at the beginning, and we went over there two tours and with practically nothing in the charts, and just the first tour was a bit of a disaster almost in a way, apart from a few shows which were stunning, the kids rioting and all that. But the second tour they'd realised, 6 months later they realised, and then from then on it was uphill,
Of your early recordings, what's your favourite one? And I'll play it now for our listener.
Earliest, what, the first few years you mean?
Yeah, the first 2 or 3 albums.
Wow, there's loads of them.
What you like?
I'd not Fade Away is probably quite a nice one. That was our first top 5 that got to number 3. The strange thing was, it got to number 3 in the charts, and yet at the end of the year it was voted Record of the Year by all the Enemy and all that. So we got Record of the Year, and it only got to number 3. So I don't know what happened to all the records that got to number 1 that year because we beat them for some reason.
And here is Not Fade Away. That's Not Fade Away, and the choice of our special guest Bill Wyman tonight on the Record Collectors.
Bill, what I'd like to ask you about is that I know lots of people ask you about the Rolling Stones, but what about your own bands that you've produced? I'm thinking like the band you've got at the moment, Willie and the Poor Boys, and bands you were producing in the late 60s and 70s.
Turkey Buzzard and
Yeah, can you tell us a little bit about Turkey Buzzard?
A little bit. I've got to get back to my rehearsals soon, so I can't be here all day. But I did that because I had musical interests. All musicians have other ideas, and if they can't fulfil them within their band, they usually get very, frustrated and angry and disappointed, and they usually leave or something. Well, I didn't do that. I thought, well, I'm doing this with the band, and I like what we're doing, but there's other interests. I've got other styles. I did them with other people. I did demo sessions, and I found Peter Frampton when he was 13 and things like that. And then I started to produce the odd band through the 60s in my spare time. And then I did The End. They did a few albums, a couple of albums. They were very successful in Europe, in Spain particularly, where they had a couple of top 10 records. And then they became Turkey Buzzard, and we did 5 albums together in the late 60s to early mid-70s. They were very successful in America, and they played all the major stadiums and that right across Europe. So that was good. They were a good band. They were a bit like Zeppelin in a way, but a bit lighter, and more melodic vocally. But they were a similar kind of band. And then I started doing my own things. I left it for about 5 years, and then I started to do solo recordings because I was writing songs that weren't compatible with what the Stones were doing. I had no way of getting them to other artists, so I just thought, I'll do them myself. So I started solo records in 73. 74, I did 2 solo albums in the 70s, and in the early 80s I did another one. And I had some really good success with those, and some really good failures with them as well. No, it was a mixture because I had to do them in bits and pieces. So by the time an album was finished, I didn't like all of it. It was last year sort of thing. I liked half the tracks and didn't like the other half. So I was never able to concentrate totally on them and do them well and be satisfied with them. They went out because we'd used the budget up on the record company wanted them to out, and so I got talked into it. And then later I did some film music and stuff like that in the beginning of the 80s, and then I went...
Was that Digital Dreams?
No, that was a fun thing I did for television, but I did a major movie. I did some stuff for Italian director Dario Argento. I did some stuff for some of his movies, horror movies. And then I did a big major motion picture called Green Ice with Rowan O'Neill, Omar Sharif and Anne Archer, and that got very nicely received by the critics. The film didn't, but my music did, funnily enough, but it didn't help me too much because the film bombed, and then I left it for a while, and then I decided to put a fun band together and raise some money for Ronnie Lane, multiple sclerosis.
Yes.
So I put the band Willie and the Poor Boys together, which was a great band, and we did a really nice album, very well received. And then we did a live album a couple of years later.
Yes, we played that many times.
With Gary Brooker and Andy Fairweather in Sweden. That was fun. That was more like a forerunner of what I'm doing now, but it concentrated on the beginnings of rock and roll, late 40s, early 50s, and the jump music that was happening just before rock and roll. So when I did this covers a bigger spectrum of styles, because I've got more singers here. I've got more musicians. See, in this band, for instance, I've got Georgie Fame playing jazzy, bluesy, Ray Charlesy, R&B stuff, and that great vocal of his. I've got Gary Brooker, who's like steeped in New Orleans music, Fats Domino and Little Richard and Jerry Lee Lewis and a bit of Memphis.
He worked with Jerry, didn't he?
He worked with all those people, but he's about the only white guy that can sing like Little Richard. Not many people know that. And he does wonderful ballads as well, of course, like White Shade of Pale. Then I've got Albert Lee on lead guitar, who's the guitarist. He's like Tony Bennett's the singer's singer, although he don't have huge hits himself. Everybody says he's the great. Well, it's the same with Albert Lee. And Albert Lee gives me, apart from singing, he gives me the styles of the beginnings of rockabilly and early rock and roll and the taste of country. He does all that. He works in Nashville. He works with all those people. Works with the Everlys and all that, and he does sessions with all the country artists. So he covers that spectrum. Then I've got Martin Taylor on guitar with him, who's a jazz guitarist. He plays Django Reinhardt, all that fantastic. So, and then I've got Beverly Skeet, the black singer, who can sing from ballads to R&B stuff and all that. I'm covered. I've got 2 horns, 2 girls, and backup vocalist. It's a big band, and we can play a whole assortment of music. You see.
I mean,
So this is stepped on further from Willie and the Poor Boys. It's become much wider, but it's the same kind of idea of people coming in and interchanging, if you want. If somebody's working 1 month, then I can get another piano player instead of Gary, or I can get another guitarist. I can get like Peter Frampton come in if Martin's busy, and it's like a jazz band in that way, because people can come and go, and the band is still the band.
You always seem to be, if I use the term, that cornerstone. You always seem to be the steady one with his feet on the ground. And I often wonder between Keith and Mick in those days that you kept them in focus. And
Not me,
no.
me and Charlie
Together.
maybe. Well, we were always called the straightest rhythm section in rock and roll. We were always reliable. We were always there, always sober, always, because we both had families and we had little children, so we behaved ourselves. We went home after gigs and fresh in the morning, they had been out in the clubs all night, they were all out of it, so they always relied on us, and if you've got the foundation solid, anything else can happen because it's there. If you haven't got that foundation, then it just goes haywire.
We're going to quickly, because I know the clock's beating us, mention to you that you are the archivist, and our audience are collectors. We're keen collectors. What sort of things do you like collecting? Which you have?
Well, my favourite things. I don't see lots of people collect the records. Lots of people collect tape, video stuff, and all that, visual stuff, and bootleg records. And I'm not really that interested in that. Yeah, if there's the odd strange record I find with satisfaction on both sides, which I've got one of, and things like that, singles, yeah, it's interesting. I'm more interested in printed matter, posters, tickets, and all those sort of things. Passes, programs, all those. That's what I like. And documents, letters, fans' letters, and I like all documentation, because I should have been a librarian, really, or something like that, because I like that kind of thing.
I mean, you obviously archive everything for the Rolling Stones, and of course, in some of the restaurants.
No, I do it for me.
It's
not for the Rolling Stones.
But I mean, it is for you, but in a way, it's all connected. I should say it's all connected with the Rolling Stones. Apart from your connection with the Stones, any other artist material that you collect? Anything else that you've got in your...
No, only my own family things, personal things. I've got my ration book and my identity card from the early 50s and things like that, all my dad's war papers and records and service books and all. It's family. I've got photos going back to 1850 of my great grandfathers and great grandfathers and things like that. No other things. I collect other kinds of things, not memorabilia of people, but I collect cigarette cards. I've got tons of those, really old ones going back to the First World War, war posters and all that. They're really rare. I collect coins. I collect stamps, autographs. I've got all these old books of music hall artists from 1910 onwards. Everybody, George Robey, Harry Champion, Murray Lloyd, all of them, and they've all got poems in them, drawings, pressed flowers. They're beautiful. I've got a whole load of those. I'm going to write a book about the music hall one day.
We also we've got a lot. This is the tape off. And amongst all your, is there anything that you can almost have anything, I would imagine? But what is it you're still searching for? Is there anything that you?
I've got lots of cricket stuff because I know a lot of the cricketers, so I'm happy with that. Yeah, I haven't got. Where's that from?
Okay.
We
were talking last time was.
Yeah. Bill, is there anything that is still your holy grail that you're searching for?
Well, I haven't got an original photo signed by Hancock. I've got a copy of a photo with Hancock's signature, but I haven't got the original signature on there. That would be nice, something like that. But no, that's about it. I love all the comedians. Max Miller would be nice.
Yeah.
Something Max Miller signed, or did I haven't got that, and I love him. I think he's wonderful.
I'm sure those wishes can come true. But
well, I've met Spike Milligan and people like that, so I know all them. So you don't even think about getting anything signed. But him, I would have loved to have met, but I never did. Max.
Of all the tracks that you've recorded, and I've got a stack of them here, anything from any of your albums you'd like us to play right now? And the track you're choosing for
it? It's from my album 1980, the one that had Je suis un rockstar on it. The second single, which almost made the top 30, it got to 32, and I was a bit disappointed it didn't quite get there. It's called A New Fashion. That was I like that one.
Bill Wyman, thank you very much from all our listeners.
Thank you.